For my final interview, I went out to Briar Creek and interviewed Todd Grosshandler, who is a chemist and he is an upper class citizen who does now own his own business and has worked for a large business in the past as well. All right, so thank you for taking the time to sit down for an interview with me. For our first question, what percentage of the world's total wealth would you guess is held by the richest 20%?
I would say over 80%.
It's 94%. So that leaves 6%, obviously, for the bottom entire 80% of the world. So knowing that answer now, what are your thoughts or feelings about how skewed that number is?
Certainly the majority of the wealth is held by a small percentage of the people, and there's no question about that. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I mean, I think that there are some bad things that can come from that concentration of wealth, but from a broader perspective, I don't know that is a terrible thing for the economy and for the people in general. And I would say one of the reasons I think it's not a bad reason is because of the economic development that can have. It's clearly the people that have a large percentage of the wealth are the people that are controlling and investing in the businesses and the research and development and the areas of the economy that have long-term benefit to our society, right? They help bring medicines to market. They help innovate technology that can make things better for the whole world. They help engineer crops that can feed people. So if we don't have good stewards of those resources and that wealth that are investing with a vision for the future, you can end up, in my opinion, sometimes with a shorter economic cycle, a cycle where the decisions are made for immediate gratification and not necessarily long-term benefit to society in general. So, there certainly are some downsides to having that much money in that concentration of people associated with political problems and political power and beyond, sort of the democracy that we live in the United States. So, there's some pros and cons, to both of that. From my perspective, I generally think it's not a bad thing that a good percentage of the wealth is concentrated in that smaller number of people.
All right, excellent answer. So as we just heard from your last answer, you would side with the people that think do you think it would be good motivation for people that aren't in the top 20% or in the top 20%?
I think it's a troubling and complex question. So it's not a straightforward question. I don't necessarily know that. I don't think it's a motivation. I would say no. I don't think that people look to those few people that have vast wealth and vast resources to say, I would like to be there someday, and I'm going to work real hard to get there. I do think to sort of level the playing field, what we need is more education, which in a lot of ways levels the playing field in an affordable manner, right? As we get to technologies that can educate, there's a lot of opportunities for massive online learning classes. There's a lot of ways to learn very valuable skills moving forward that are not expensive, and hopefully these can help elevate more people from being very poor, which it skews the data low because of the vast number of people that are very poor, and bring them into a more modern economy and bring them into more economic wealth by having this opportunity to have access to education and training that can prepare them for jobs of the future.
Absolutely. So, so for the people that are on the side of saying it's a bad thing and it could cause some corruption and whatnot for the top 20% to have that much money and the top 1% even to have as much as they do. Do you think there's a fair way to even out the scales that doesn't take away the hard-earned money from
Sure.
the top 20%?
It's a good question. I mean, I think I would say two things on that. The first is, as I mentioned, making education very affordable for everybody, really around the world, not just in the United States, and making it accessible and making it so that they can learn skills where they can add value. And the second, I would say, would be in a fair tax code, the current tax code, and I'm speaking as a taxpayer and as a business owner, so I've kind of been on both sides of this. And in general, for most corporations, the taxes are generally pretty fair, but in the larger corporations and the very wealthy corporations, there are really a lot of opportunities for legal opportunities for coming up with strategies so you minimize your tax burden, which is what you should do in that role.
Yeah.
And as the leader, as the CEO of that company. But I believe that those laws should be changed so that they're pretty fair and they're pretty consistent across all companies. And I think that could really help make things a little more fair to everybody.
Okay, so you're saying you would support a higher income tax on the wealthy?
I'm not saying I would. In fact, I wouldn't support a higher income tax. I would support a fair income in revision to the laws for business taxes.
Okay.
So that you have less opportunities to make accounting changes or to you do like an inversion where you effectively everything stays the same except you're calling your corporate headquarters overseas, and so all of a sudden there's a lot of taxes you don't have to pay, or repatriating cash in and out of the country. There are a variety of accounting things that can be done that I think are unfair, and as a result they pay less taxes. On an individual basis, I think that my perspective on that, and again, as a person who's paid, in my view, more than my fair share of income taxes. I think that what's unfair about the income.
And unfortunately, during my interview with Todd Grosshandler, similar to what happened with Ms. Hayes, my phone also crashed during the interview towards the end, which, again, we did not realize until afterwards. So he also gave me permission to just relay his answer. And the way he was finishing that last answer was he was talking about how Mitt Romney, for example, has a smaller percentage of income tax than Mr. Grosshandler does. But even though the percentage is smaller, the dollar value that each of them is paying, Mitt Romney's is obviously a lot higher. And he was just talking about how there needs to be some modifications to the system where businesses can't get around as many of these taxes and take as many shortcuts as they can right now. And then he also went on, after I asked him about welfare, he said that he doesn't think it's a bad thing. It just needs to be modified so that people that are on welfare only get it for a certain amount of time, and that all the rules for it are laid out up front so they know exactly how much they can get, how long they can get it for, and then once they reach that, they're on their own. They need to go get a job, everything else, so that it can't be abused as it is on some occasions right now. After interviewing Miss Hayes, Mrs. Precise, and Mr. Grosshandler, I understand both sides, and I think I have to side more with the wealthy on this one, because as Mr. Grosshandler pointed out, the wealthy are doing good things with that money that they are having, and you couldn't necessarily count on that if like if you were to give equal shares to every person in the world, all those innovations and everything that make the world better for the people on it wouldn't happen. You need some people to have more money than others, even if it is by a large margin. It has to happen for the world to go forward, and it's not like the wealthy are just being greedy and just spending it all on cars and houses and everything else. They're doing good with the money. Bill Gates has donated over $28 billion to various charities, including $8 billion to improve global health. So, again, for the most part, they're not being greedy with their money. They're helping the world to progress. So, and I understand there are pros and cons that come with it. There are going to be people that abuse the money they have and try to use it to get power or whatever. And while I know those people exist, I would try to exclude those select few, because they are not the vast majority. They are just a few bad apples in the bunch. The rich, as they are doing good for the world, they are also creating jobs, which help the people that need money, give them a chance to acquire it. And while almost half the world can't afford medicine or education, that wouldn't necessarily change if you were to if you were to take some of the money from the wealthy and give it to the poor. That's 3.5 billion people that can't afford medicine or education, a lot of which are in African nations such as the Congo or places like that. And that's not necessarily going to change. That is definitely not going to change overnight. It's going to be something that needs to happen over a long time, making education more affordable. Things like that are going to be the only way this problem is going to get more, I wouldn't say fixed, but more evened out, I guess, which is what the people that say this is a bad thing, that seems to be what they want, is for the bottom 80% to just have more of the money. The only way that's going to happen is if they can afford education, which is, as Mr. Grosshandler pointed out, it does help balance out the equation. So, yeah, I do side with the wealthy on this one. And while I would say you could say it's an issue, I don't think it is causing too many problems. It's definitely not causing as many problems as people seem to think it is.